nicely the way you've done with the logo in the back. That's smart.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. You know,
and also
and
the
Giannis,
book in the back.
I'm gonna call an audible as well, Giannis. I don't think I have some slides. I'm not gonna put them up on the screen right now because I was kind of enjoying looking at everyone's faces and um, in true boy fashion, I want this to hopefully be as much of a conversation as anything else, and I'm here to learn from all of you and share some of hopefully some valuable information from my perspective about what's going on in the voice space. Um, the main focus of my conversation today is uh, what's going on with custom voice assistants. And I will share a white paper that I published this week that goes into this topic in much more detail for anybody that wants to read it. It's just a few pages. Um, but what I want to talk about is sort of like what custom voice assistants are, why they matter, and how your organization could possibly get involved with this technology. So it's really easy with voice to kind of get caught up in the excitement surrounding the explosive growth of in-home smart speakers. Um, that has kind of been the main headline in the voice ecosystem for the last few years for very good reason. Amazon and Google uh, have made a massive investment in pushing in-home smart speakers into all of our homes. Um, Interestingly, during the pandemic, the trend slowed down. There was sort of explosive growth in the space. I don't have the numbers at the tip of my tongue, but it was like double-digit growth year over year from 2016 until the pandemic hit, and then it started to slow down. But there are well over 100 million homes in the US, which is about a third of the population, with smart speakers in their home, and most people are using them, right? But that is sort of the smart speakers are only part of the story, right? In reality, when we talk about global population, there are billions of devices in the world that have a speaker, that can be used as a means to sort of engage in a conversation with conversational AI. According to Alexa, Amazon, if you were to go to Amazon and search for like top apps, one interesting thing that I've noted is um, the most popular apps on Amazon right now they fall into basically three categories: meditation tools, which can be like soundboards, like listen to like soothing sounds, that kind of experience. Gags, things that I think for kids to make each other laugh. You can probably use your imagination and what that equals in a voice ecosystem. And then party games, right? Those are the top three most popular categories. But what's really missing is, if you were to look at it just in terms of popularity, are branded voice applications that are creating real business value, and meaningful customer experiences, that are going to move the needle in a way that is healthy for business concerns and the customers that they serve. And so, for that reason, I think if you were a business analyst, or anyone really considering voice for your business, you might, be forgiven for thinking to yourself, we don't really belong in this space, at least not right now. And then enterprise brands are not running the show in the smart speaker ecosystem for a lot of reasons, but the most well known have been a problem since the beginning, which is discoverability. It's very hard to find brands in these smart speaker ecosystems, and even when you're searching for something, like if you want to know about the weather, you would ask Amazon Alexa, like, what's the weather going to be today? Alexa and Google have done a very good job of tracking and determining what the most popular questions are, and then becoming like the first party source for that information, instead of saying, connecting you with. And in the US, we have options like AccuWeather, or whatever, name your local news source of information. For some reason, Google and Alexa have decided that it's in their best interest to sort of own that information themselves. Retention, people are, according to the metrics, even if they do find brands, they'll have an experience with it once or twice, and then they sort of abandon that stuff, so it becomes like shelfware, if you will, and monetization. And that last one is the most fascinating. There are, like I said, over a third of U.S. adults own a smart speaker, so it's more than 100 million households. Yet remarkably, less than 1% of all Alexa skills in the US use Amazon Pay. By usage, the most common walled garden in the walled garden ecosystem, the smart speaker ecosystem, the most popular stuff continues to be single turn interactions like asking one question, setting a timer. But among the top 18 most common interactions with a smart speaker, actually making a purchase is number 18. It's in dead last. But when you contrast that with what organizations want from voice, a recent study talked about stuff that frankly is a little bit on the nose, but it's like increased revenue, improved productivity, and new business opportunities. Like that's what we want from voice. That's not what we're getting in the smart speaker ecosystem. Now, the good news is there's a lot to be excited about. We sort of owe a debt of gratitude to Amazon and Google for pushing all these smart speakers out into the world, because now the market is primed and ready. We know how to interact with these things. We know that voice is a solution for getting things done. So the question is, how do we take this and improve it? And that's where custom voice assistants come in. So if you were to ask 10 experts what custom voice assistants are, 9 of them are going to start by explaining what they are not. I will go through it very quickly. First and foremost, they are not low-functioning voice apps deployed exclusively into Google or Amazon's ecosystem. They are also, however, not necessarily highly complex point solutions for specific problems. And the classic example I'll give you is voice has existed for a long time. We don't really think about it that much, but in the IVR telephony space, was back in 1983 or 84, Nuance released the first like automated voice attendant system for telephones. You call a business, and you are having a conversation with what is essentially a robot. That is a very, fast forward today, those are very complete and complex point solutions to very specific problems. That's not really what custom voice app assistants are for. The best example of a custom voice assistant, in the most straightforward terms, they are branded software that allows users to access the features and functionality of a product, service, or experience with an intelligent voice interface. So in-car voice assistants that enable drivers to manage car systems, including entertainment, climate, and navigation, are a really great example of the technology in action. Drivers, their experience can be improved, their safety can be improved by layering in voice to the in-car experience. And if you look at the luxury car makers, and actually lots of car makers now, one of our clients is Volkswagen, are adding that type of functionality. One of the most recent applications that was built with VoiceFi is an extension of their in-car voice experience deployed via mobile. So they now have a mobile, owners of the ID series electric vehicles can access their car via Apple device using a voice experience built with VoiceFi to ask questions like, what's our range? Where did I park? That's a good one. If you've been out drinking too much and you forget where your car was, it can actually tell you via the mobile app, which I thought was really cool.
So, Jay,
yeah,
Peter from the European Commission asked, curious to hear where Siri is standing in this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Siri and Cortana and Bixby, right, are these sort of like OEM implementations of voice assistants that are coming packaged as a feature of operating systems. And so that app that I just talked about, the Volkswagen car app, it can be invoked via Siri. And basically that's when I talked earlier about the fact that, yeah, there are 100 in the US, there are 100 million in-home smart speakers. That's what everybody thinks about right now when they think about voice, but in reality, there are billions of devices. Siri and Cortana are great examples of, okay, there are a lot of devices in the world that have a speaker and a microphone, and they have a sort of like low-level functioning operating system that allows you to deploy applications onto it. And that's where custom voice apps fit in. Any other questions? I know I've sort of been droning on for a while.
Well, that works. Yeah, so far so good, Jake. We can
Awesome.
just hit play with you. Did you want to? Have you made slides for us that you're holding back, or did you want to show a slide or two?
Yeah, I mean, I can put slides up on the screen. Let me share.
We can ask you to take it back down. Let's have a look. Let's see your slides. The only end solution for building intelligent voice assistants that are available everywhere.
Yeah. So in the past, Giannis, you probably remember like the first few times you were gracious enough to invite me to come talk with our community. I came in sort of like, hey, look at my slides. This is our company and this is what we do. And so now I'm trying to go the exact opposite. So I think it's very healthy that you're inviting me now to share this. So yeah, so just one more sort of quick point of sort of setting this up. Why do custom voice assistants matter so much? As the voice market has matured, the use cases are transcending mere novelty, right? So for organizations that want to create something more complex than like hey, play me some soothing sounds so that I can meditate, this is sort of the right pathway forward. So you can create value with custom voice assistants. They can be much more tightly integrated with existing technology because you're not sort of working through a third-party ecosystem. And they can be much better aligned with your brand at the level, not only at the level of sort of like, the experience of your brand, but your overall customer experience. Right now, when you deploy voice applications into the walled garden ecosystem, you have to invoke them through another brand, right? You have to invoke Alexa and then invoke your application. So organizations that would rather just make voice a layer of their overall omni-channel customer experience, this is the right pathway forward. So we talk about being the only end-to-end solution for building intelligent voice assistants that are available everywhere. What I mean by that is when you do build custom voice assistants, it is necessary to package some important technology that has to be part of it. If you deploy a voice app into Alexa, you get things like wake words. Alexa has the Alexa wake word built into it. That's not going to change. You invoke Alexa by saying, my TV just woke up because we have an Amazon TV in there, by saying, hey, Alexa, and then you start the conversation with it. You build a custom voice application or a custom voice assistant, you actually have to create a wake word, and you can do that dynamically with our technology. You also need the speech recognition, the natural language understanding. We do personalization, and we have a decision engine. Then the text-to-speech processing, media and effects management. What's really interesting about voice now is that more and more folks are doing multimodal voice applications. So, some of you may have these. The more recent iterations of the smart speaker ecosystem even have both speakers and a screen to device. So a lot of the apps that we're building and deploying into that space now are being packaged up and delivered with video and still images that go along with the application. The effects management piece for for custom assistants is very interesting. So one of the applications that our clients are using it for now are to create, to make their websites more accessible or their mobile apps more accessible. Unlike a screen reader, which is basically a really important technology for people that have visual impairments, a custom voice assistant on a web experience or any digital service, frankly, allows you to interact with it. So you could say things like, open the About Us section, scroll down the page, open that image, etc. And that's a really powerful and interesting new way to make use of voice. This could be, frankly, the market that I'm most interested in today are chief product officers, product leaders, product designers, because frankly, any application, any like content management system, any website, anything that that has a user experience could potentially be improved by layering in voice as a means to interface with that product or service. VoiceFi is also an interesting sort of space in the market. There are some black box AI platforms out there. That's not us. We first build ourselves as a conversational content management system. Today, one of our most popular sort of like users are conversation designers. You actually do go into VoiceFi and create each turn in the conversation. It is improved by the use of artificial intelligence to make the application smarter, so you don't have to, for instance, to invoke a voice or to start a conversation with Conversational AI built by VoiceFi. You don't have to type out like, say hi, say hello, say buenos dias, say like, you say like, okay, this is the welcome message. This is how we start the conversation. AI sort of layers in all of the additional ways that that match what the user's intent might be. Let's see. So we talked about the way VoiceFi or the way Volkswagen is using us. I think there are some other interesting case studies. Zeratech built an app. This one is actually deployed into the smart speaker ecosystem that allows people to have a conversation about what the allergy forecast is for the day. So it's actually connected to third-party sources of information that provide localized data about what things like what the pollen count is going to be and how that will impact people that suffer from seasonal allergies. One really great branded voice experience we did was with Wild Turkey. What's cool about custom voice apps is, or custom voice assistants, is that you don't have to use the default voicing. So I think most people now have had the experience of talking with Alexa. It's the Alexa voice, right? It's a great voice, but in the case with Wild Turkey, when they came to work with us, they wanted to make it more personal. And so it actually has, it actually features Matthew McConaughey and the distillers at Wild Turkey at different points in the conversation, which makes for a much more intimate and sort of genuine and authentic experience as you're working your way through the information. And what this application does is tells you more about Wild Turkey, the history, how they make their whiskeys, and then provides a guided tasting experience. So you can, if you have Wild Turkey whiskeys in your home, you can say, yeah, tell me more about what I should be looking for as I'm sipping this whiskey or that whiskey. For the higher ed application, we are just about to go live with Hamilton. The alumni I mentioned earlier that went to Cornell, they did their undergrad. All three of our founders did their undergrad at Hamilton College, which was a small liberal arts school. And we were invited to create an application for them, which is, again, I like it a lot because it uses the voices of current faculty and students to help newly accepted students understand more about campus life, academics, the history of the school. It creates a new, more accessible in a different way mechanism to help onboard new students into their Hamilton College experience. In the healthcare space, we did find a doctor and find a location and get up-to-date COVID information for Yale New Haven Health. So that's a very a very common application or use of digital for healthcare for hospitals is to find a doctor, and so we layered on voice on top of that application for them.
This is great.
Those
Jay.
are my
Good to
those are my
see.
slides. Yeah.
There was another question also about security risks. Any security concerns that come up in your conversations with customers?
No, it's interesting. I will. I don't know the answer to that. I think if I were to go over to our chief product officer or the engineers that are building the platform, they probably would. What I do know is that when you're deploying custom voice applications, one of the benefits to that is that you own the application from top to bottom. You're not reliant upon the low-level infrastructure that's provided by Google or Amazon. And so I can say confidently that that is better for your organization in terms of privacy and data protection. If you own the data and the experience at every level, then you get to choose what you get to create and adhere to your privacy and data protection policies. And you don't have to sort of worry about like what is Google doing with that or what is Amazon doing with that.
Cool. Any other questions? Feel free to just raise your hand. We do have a couple of minutes left. Jeff, did you have a question?
Yeah, great presentation, Jake. One thing I've noticed, and this might be specific to healthcare, but there's a lot of pilots. There have been a lot of pilots going on in this space, but the transition from pilot to program is not insignificant in the voice space. And I'd be curious if you've seen any trends on kind of organizational adoption and looking more enterprise wide, and kind of what that takes, kind of what the tipping point is to kind of get folks off of a point solution or a point app to really look at voice as more of an enterprise capability.
Yeah, that is a really interesting question. It's something that we're thinking about a lot right now. Traditionally, I mean, we're a very young company. We're only a few years old, but earlier in our life, in the growth of VoiceFi, we were selling a lot more to people who were responsible for marketing, customer experience, and innovation, right? And with innovation, we see, we're still selling to people that are in the innovation side of the business, but we see a lot of that where we kind of get caught up in a labs experiment that never really catches. With customer experience and marketing, what we found is that the use cases have a tendency to be a little more shallow and not necessarily connected to creating value. And that's why a big piece of our pivot towards selling to people that own product is that they have more interesting use cases. Like I had mentioned earlier with Volkswagen, and actually interestingly, so that Volkswagen has, as part of like their innovation space, they have digital services, and that's who our stakeholder is on that side. So he is responsible for creating or driving innovation within the driver experience. But there are metrics like improved convenience, improved safety. So I think that's key to the conversation is getting, and this is probably stuff that I frankly learned from you in selling digital experience, is VoiceFi as a platform, like many digital experience management platforms before, makes it very easy to design, build, and deploy these things. So I think, as I talked about in my article in CMS Wire yesterday, it's very easy for organizations to get kind of caught up in that excitement of like, oh, it's the like when I got here in my training, it took, I did a 1-hour demo on the software and created a voice application. So I think if you don't start with strategy and think very intentionally and thoughtfully about what are the metrics that we're trying to move with this, then most likely you're going to end up with something that isn't meaningfully aligned with the business goals and objectives, and isn't going to, isn't going to be sticky and isn't going to move the needle, frankly. It's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, follow up on that. Now we are seeing the clinical adoption really take off right now. So in bedside, and help physicians transcribe notes and really reduce the burden on the care side of the house. It's growing pretty fast. So I would expect that matures pretty quickly, at least in healthcare on the marketing side as well.
Yeah, one of our existing clients on the pharmaceutical side, we're looking at doing a really interesting project with them, which allows prescribing physicians to ask questions about comorbidities. So if they have a smart speaker or any speaker-enabled device in their office and they're prescribing this particular medication, they can just ask, what do I need? My patient has diabetes. What do I need to know? That those types of helpers at the level of providing care, I think, are going to, because it's connected to like improving health outcomes, will be much more interesting than, I mean, Find a Doctor, I think, is a really interesting use case, but for some reason it's not necessarily the most, it's not when people think about like how will voice be helpful, Find a Doctor works fine as it is,
Mm-hmm. All right. Any closing question? Yeah, Martin, our Swiss innovation leader.
No, just one question. So this is all about voice, but could you imagine that these microphones can also pick other sounds? For example, you mentioned the Volkswagen example, that it picks up the sound of a siren of an ambulance, or if you push a brake, that the brake is making a sound that the brake needs to be repaired. Is that something that you're also looking into, or just the voice stuff?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, VoiceFi does specialize in conversational AI, and that is a really big problem. And believe me, like we haven't solved it yet. Like there's all these smart speakers are out there in the world, and it's still very easy to create and build and deploy voice experiences that are pretty clumsy. So there's still so much investment of time and resources and energy to really start to get that right. But I certainly do know that the technology can tell the difference between environmental sounds and voices and make sense of it. Like for instance, wake words, the dominant technology for wake words right now doesn't actually listen to the word and comprehend it with NLU. It looks at the waveform of the sound, and decides, does this waveform match what I'm looking for? Yes or no. Right. So that could be used to recognize any type of sound, frankly.
Cool.
But VoiceFi, yeah, we are focused on getting the conversational experience right.
Yep.
Thanks, Jake. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing with us. Really, really good.